Imagine for a second, it's the peak of summer, the sun is beating down, and you have no refrigerator. How would you keep your food from spoiling? Seems impossible, right? Well, for thousands of years, Native Americans thrived in diverse climates across North America, preserving their food without any modern technology. They were masters of utilizing the natural world to their advantage. Today, we're going to unlock their secrets and discover how they kept their food cool and fresh, even without refrigeration. We'll explore ingenious techniques like harnessing the power of cool springs, building underground storage spaces, and even creating natural air conditioning. These ancient methods are not just fascinating historical relics. They offer valuable lessons in sustainability, resourcefulness, and yes, even money-saving strategies that you can use today. So get ready to be amazed by the ingenuity of Native American food preservation techniques. You might just be inspired to try some of these methods yourself and reduce your reliance on energy-guzzling appliances. Let's dive in. Before we dive into the specific techniques, it's important to understand the context in which these practices develop. Native Americans held a profound respect for the natural world and possessed an intricate knowledge of their environment. This deep connection to the land shaped their approach to food preservation, leading to innovative and sustainable methods. Unlike modern society, where food is often readily available at the grocery store, Native Americans relied on seasonal harvests and hunting. Preserving food was essential for survival, especially during harsh winters or times of scarcity. They developed a variety of techniques to ensure that their food supply lasted, minimizing waste and maximizing resources. These techniques were not only practical, but also reflected a deep understanding of natural processes. They observed the cycles of nature, the behavior of animals, and the properties of plants, incorporating this knowledge into their food preservation methods. For example, tribes in the arid Southwest, like the Pueblo people, built homes with thick adobe walls that provided natural insulation, keeping their living spaces and food stores cool in the scorching heat. In contrast, the Inuit people of the Arctic relied on the freezing temperatures and permafrost to preserve their food, often burying it in the ground or storing it in ice caches. The Haudenosaunee Iroquois of the Northeast, known for their agricultural practices, developed sophisticated methods for storing their harvests. They built underground storage pits lined with bark to keep their corn, beans, and squash fresh throughout the winter. These examples highlight the diversity of Native American food preservation techniques, each adapted to the specific environment and cultural practices of different tribes. By understanding this context, we can appreciate the ingenuity and resourcefulness of these methods and learn valuable lessons for sustainable living today. One of the simplest yet most effective ways Native Americans kept their food cool was by utilizing natural springs and cool water sources. These springs, often found in valleys or near mountains, maintain a consistently cool temperature year-round, providing a natural refrigerator for perishable foods. Many tribes across North America recognize the value of these springs. For example, the Cherokee people, who lived in the southeastern woodlands, often stored food in baskets submerged in cool streams. They understood that the flowing water would help to keep their food from spoiling, especially during the hot summer months. In the arid Southwest, where water was scarce, tribes like the Hopi and Zuni carefully managed their springs, using them not only for drinking water, but also for preserving their precious food supplies. They might place food in containers or wrap it in leaves before submerging it in the cool spring water. The technique wasn't limited to just storing food directly in the water. Some tribes, like the Coast Salish people of the Pacific Northwest, built structures over springs, creating a cool, shaded environment for food storage. These spring houses, as they were sometimes called, allowed for air circulation while maintaining a consistently cool temperature. Even in colder climates like the Great Plains, tribes utilized the cooling properties of water. The Lakota people, for instance, would sometimes store food in containers placed in cold streams or rivers, taking advantage of the natural refrigeration provided by the flowing water. Now, you might be thinking, that's great for people who live near natural springs, but what about the rest of us? Well, the principle of using cool water for food preservation can still be applied today, even in urban environments. Here are a few ways you can adapt this technique. Use a cooler with ice water. When going on a picnic or camping, fill a cooler with ice water and submerge your food containers. This will keep your food much cooler than just using ice alone. Store food in your basement or cellar. If you have a basement or cellar, these spaces tend to be cooler than the rest of your house. You can store food in these areas, especially during the cooler months. Utilize cool water from a well or spring. If you have access to a well or spring, you can use the cool water for food storage, just like Native Americans did. By understanding the principles behind this simple yet effective technique, you can keep your food fresh and reduce your reliance on energy-intensive refrigeration. It's a testament to the ingenuity of Native Americans and their ability to work in harmony with nature to meet their needs. Native Americans across the continent understood a fundamental principle long before modern refrigeration. The Earth maintains a stable, cool temperature below ground. This knowledge led them to develop ingenious ways to utilize the Earth's natural insulation for food storage. One of the most widespread and effective techniques was the creation of root cellars and underground storage pits. These structures varied in design depending on the tribe and the environment. Some tribes, like the Mandan people of the Great Plains, dug large bell-shaped pits lined with grass and bark. These pits, often located near their earth lodges, provided ideal conditions for storing root vegetables, dried meats, and other provisions. In the Southwest, where the Pueblo people carved their homes into cliff sides, they often incorporated underground chambers or niches within their dwellings. These cool, dark spaces offered a refuge from the intense desert heat and served as excellent storage for crops like corn, beans, and squash. The Haudenosaunee Iroquois of the Northeast, skilled farmers and hunters, also utilized underground storage. They dug pits lined with bark and leaves, creating a cool, humid environment for preserving their harvest of root vegetables, nuts, and dried berries. Even in the Arctic, where the ground remains frozen for much of the year, the Inuit people found ways to utilize underground storage. They dug tunnels and chambers in the permafrost, creating natural freezers for preserving meat, fish, and other foods. While the specific designs varied, the underlying principle remained the same. The Earth's natural insulation helped to maintain a consistent temperature, protecting food from extreme heat or cold. This allowed Native Americans to preserve their food for months, ensuring a steady supply even during times of scarcity. Today, the concept of underground storage is still relevant, even for those of us who live in cities and have access to modern refrigeration. Here's how you can adapt this technique. Building a modern root cellar. Choose a location. Find a cool, shaded spot in your yard or basement. Select your container. Use a large bin, crate, or even an old refrigerator buried in the ground. Insulate. Line the container with straw, sawdust, or other insulating materials. Ventilation. Ensure proper ventilation to prevent moisture buildup. A simple pipe or vent can be used. Store your food. Place your produce, canned goods, or other items in the root cellar. Other underground storage options. Basement storage. If you have a basement, utilize the cooler areas for storing potatoes, onions, and other root vegetables. Garage storage. For canned goods and other non-perishables, a cool corner of your garage can serve as a makeshift storage area. Community gardens. Some community gardens offer shared root cellar spaces for members. By embracing the wisdom of Native American food preservation techniques, you can reduce your reliance on energy-intensive refrigeration, minimize food waste, and connect with a more sustainable way of living. Native Americans, with their deep understanding of natural processes, harnessed the power of evaporation to create cooling effects long before the invention of modern air conditioning. This ingenious technique, based on the simple principle that water absorbs heat as it evaporates, was used in various ways to keep food and living spaces cool. One of the most fascinating examples is the use of porous pottery. Tribes like the Pueblo people of the Southwest crafted pottery with tiny holes or unglazed surfaces. When water was poured into these vessels or onto the surface, it would slowly evaporate, drawing heat away and creating a cooling effect. This technique was particularly effective in dry climates where evaporation happens quickly. Other tribes, like those in the Great Basin in California, utilized woven mats or baskets made from reeds or grasses. These materials, when dampened with water, would also create an evaporative cooling effect as the water evaporated from the surface. These mats were often hung in doorways or windows, creating a natural air conditioner for their dwellings. In some cases, Even simple techniques like wrapping food in damp cloths or leaves were used to take advantage of evaporative cooling. As the water evaporated from the cloth or leaves, it would help to keep the food inside cooler. While these methods might seem rudimentary compared to modern technology, they were surprisingly effective, and the principles behind them are still relevant today. Here are a few ways you can apply evaporative cooling in your own life. DIY evaporative cooler. Gather your materials. You'll need a clay pot with a drainage hole, a saucer or tray to catch the water, a small electric fan, and water. Set it up, place the clay pot on the saucer. Fill the pot with water, allowing it to seep through the drainage hole and fill the saucer. Position the fan. Place the fan behind the pot, blowing air across the damp surface. Enjoy the cool breeze. As the water evaporates from the pot, the air blown by the fan will be cooled, creating a refreshing breeze. Other modern applications. Modern evaporative coolers, swamp coolers. These appliances, commonly used in dry climates, utilize the same principle of evaporative cooling. They draw air through water-soaked pads, cooling the air before circulating it through a building. Damp towels or sheets. On a hot day, hang a damp towel or sheet in front of an open window. As the water evaporates, it will cool the incoming air. Spray bottles. Fill a spray bottle with water and mist yourself or your surroundings for a quick cooling effect. By understanding and applying the principles of evaporative cooling, you can find simple and sustainable ways to stay cool and keep your food fresh, just like Native Americans did for centuries. It's a testament to their ingenuity and their ability to work in harmony with nature to meet their needs. While natural springs, root cellars, and evaporative cooling were key techniques, Native Americans also employed a variety of other ingenious methods to keep their food cool, showcasing their deep connection to the environment and their resourcefulness. Harnessing the shade. Many tribes understood the importance of shade in keeping food cool. They would strategically store food in shaded areas, under trees or within their dwellings, where the temperature remained lower than in direct sunlight. For example, the Plains tribes often stored dried meats and other provisions inside their teepees or under the cover of wagons, protecting them from the intense prairie sun. Utilizing natural breezes and ventilation. Native Americans were also skilled at utilizing natural breezes and ventilation to create cool storage spaces. They would often position their food stores in areas where air could circulate freely, carrying away heat and preventing spoilage. The ancestral Pueblo people, for instance, built their cliff dwellings with strategically placed openings to catch the prevailing winds, creating natural ventilation systems that helped to cool their homes and food stores. Burying food in the ground. In some regions, burying food in the ground was an effective way to keep it cool. The earth acts as a natural insulator, maintaining a stable temperature below the surface. The Haudenosaunee, Iroquois people, for example, used underground caches lined with bark to store their crops, protecting them from both heat and animals. Wrapping food in cool, damp cloths. Another simple yet effective technique was wrapping food in cool, damp cloths or leaves. As the water evaporated from the cloth or leaves, it would create a cooling effect, helping to keep the food fresh. This method was often used for short-term storage or when transporting food. Other ingenious methods. Some tribes, like the Inuit, took advantage of the naturally cold environment by storing food in ice caches or underground chambers dug into the permafrost. In coastal regions, tribes like the Chumash utilized the cool ocean water for food storage, submerging containers or wrapping food in seaweed before placing it in the water. The use of clay pots beyond evaporative cooling also played a role in food preservation. The porous nature of clay helped to regulate humidity, preventing spoilage. These diverse techniques highlight the adaptability and ingenuity of Native Americans in utilizing their surroundings to meet their needs. By observing the natural world and applying their knowledge, they developed sustainable and effective ways to keep their food cool, ensuring their survival and well-being. In addition to keeping food cool, Native Americans developed a range of sophisticated preservation techniques to ensure their food supply lasted throughout the year. These methods, often deeply intertwined with their cultural practices and respect for nature, offer valuable lessons in sustainability and resourcefulness that we can still learn from today. One of the most widely used techniques was drying. By removing moisture from foods like fruits, vegetables, and meats, they could prevent spoilage and extend their shelf life for months or even years. The Plains tribes, for example, were renowned for their pemmican, a high-energy food made from dried meat, fat, and berries that could be stored for long periods. Smoking was another common preservation method, particularly for meats and fish. The smoke helped to inhibit bacterial growth and add flavor. Tribes like the Northwest Coast peoples used smokehouses to preserve salmon, creating a staple food source that could sustain them through the winter. Fermentation was also employed to preserve various foods. By encouraging the growth of beneficial bacteria, Native Americans could transform foods like corn, vegetables, and even fish into more stable and flavorful forms. The Haudenosaunee, Iroquois, for instance, fermented corn to create a dish called succotash, which provided essential nutrients during the winter months. These traditional preservation techniques are not just relics of the past. They are still relevant today, offering healthy and sustainable ways to preserve food without relying solely on modern refrigeration. Here are a few examples of how you can adapt these methods. Drying: use a food dehydrator, oven on low heat, or even the sun to dry fruits, vegetables, and herbs. Smoking: invest in a smoker or use a simple DIY setup to smoke meats and fish. Fermenting: learn to make sauerkraut, kimchi, or other fermented foods at home. By embracing these time-tested techniques, you can reduce food waste, save money, and connect with the ingenuity and resourcefulness of Native American traditions. As we've seen, Native Americans were masters of keeping their food cool and fresh without relying on modern technology. From harnessing the power of natural springs and underground storage, to utilizing evaporative cooling and other ingenious techniques, they developed sustainable and effective methods for food preservation. These practices weren't just about survival, they reflected a deep understanding of the environment and a respect for natural resources. By working in harmony with nature, Native Americans ensured their well-being and left a legacy of knowledge that we can still learn from today. So whether you're looking to reduce your energy consumption, minimize food waste, or simply connect with a more sustainable way of living, take inspiration from the ingenuity of Native Americans. Try some of these techniques at home, experiment with building a root cellar, or create your own evaporative cooler. Share your experiences in the comments below, and let's continue to explore the wisdom of traditional practices together. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more insights into sustainable living and forgotten knowledge. Thanks for watching.